Hey, Chad Peterman here, your host of the Can't Stop the Growth podcast, a show that advances the home services industry and beyond. In this exclusive series, I've joined forces with Camp Digital to bring you powerful learnings that advance you and your business in the realm of all things marketing. Together, we bring content that empowers you to build a positive, healthy workplace for you, your people, and your bottom line. So let me officially pass the mic to Camp Digital for today's episode, chock full of insights that you can take and apply to your growth. Now listen and grow.
At Camp Digital, we know that staying competitive is paramount. Whether you're a seasoned business owner or just starting out, this series provides you with the tools and knowledge to prepare and advance your home service business to thrive in this dynamic landscape.
Each month, you'll hear from Camp Digital leadership and occasional featured guests who share knowledge and insight for real-world success. We recently sat down with several of our favorite industry experts to talk through strategies to recession-proof your home service business. We had so much great info that we decided to make this a two-part episode. Today, we'll hear from Bill Rossell, CEO of LB Capital, and Alicia Johnston, coaching manager with Nexstar Network. Let's have a listen. Well, I'm sitting here with my good friend, Bill, and I first just wanted to ask the question, Bill, can you let everybody know how long you have been in the home service industry?
I've been around the trades for probably close to 25 years now. Put it this way, to answer that question, and I think you both know, there was print yellow pages when I started in the trade. So I think that gives you an indication of how long I've been around and that how many businesses have probably been bought and sold. And there are still yellow pages that are out there, but I started selling at a very, very young point in my life, and it's helped me to get where I am today. So almost probably 25 years or so.
You and I have that in common. I started in yellow page sales as well. So right now we are facing an interesting time. We came off, abundant years in COVID in home service industry, and where a lot of people didn't really have to do a lot to get the leads, right? Like businesses were booming. And one of the things that the industry kind of noticed, and a lot of companies noticed at the end of last year, which is the end of 2023, is that the leads started to slow down. And so one, have your clients and people that you work with, have they noticed that drop in leads?
It's a great question, Megan, because a lot of the people think that there is a continued drop in leads, and there are drops, but the real question is where the drop in conversions is and where the drop in phone calls. And, we've had this conversation, we never want to be weather dependent. We do want to be weather enhanced in the different businesses that we run. But from our sake, we're still not running to the level that we need to on, the close ratios as far as from a booking standpoint. And what are those KPIs? So if you have 10 fish that jump into your boat and 4 of them are still jumping out, regardless of where your call volume is, you're not doing a good enough job to be able to grow the revenue in the market. So it's about looking at what we have going on versus focusing on that there's a drop in volume, there's a drop in demand, that we're in this position. It's about maximizing every lead that we have coming in. But there has been an inherent, you jam 7 years into 2.5 years of demand, and, people are not looking as much as what they did. But one of the things that we're finding is that, especially on the heating and air side, is that there was a lot of work that was done that was rushed and not done the right way during those high demand times by other people out there that probably could have done a better job. So we're taking those opportunities that come to us and maximizing every opportunity out there.
Yeah, that's a great lead in there, Bill. So what are some of the ways that you're recommending your clients kind of maximize these leads and conversions that are coming in?
So first and foremost, we've made a big shift into, at least at LB Cap, and what we're doing with whether it be Munns or Dilling or Frosty and the companies that we have, and really kind of putting an overall fundamental process, which we call the 4 C's, which those 4 C's are about cash or selling. How do we go about collection and executing faster, and then collaboration and coaching? And so everything is really about the coaching and the collaboration part within our organizations, to be able to say that we're really diving into listening and expanding upon what we see from a coaching standpoint to say, how can we be better? Every single lead is precious in this time frame, and we have to make sure that we're maximizing it and coaching and how we're structuring those one-on-ones. My good friend Keith Mercurio always says a bad one-on-one is better than no one-on-one. So for us, it's really about evaluating those KPIs to be able to target to say, hey, how can we maximize the revenues? And since, we're in 100% growth on the roofing side year over year, and our heating and air conditioning companies are in the double digits as far as from an increase. And it really comes down to your people. There still is demand. You can look at the search trends that, especially depending upon, like here in the month of January in the Northeast was great for us. Demand slowed down in February, but we still had good call volume. We maximized the call opportunities. For the last 7 days, I've had 100% booking rate on calls coming in. It's really about taking the time with the customer you're with versus the one you want.
Yeah, that's very true. And maximizing that opportunity. So what are some key, like if you could give kind of a takeaway when you're working with a CSR or, you're looking at that lead coming in, what are some of the things that you coach on in particular when a customer calls?
Yeah. And I'm not the expert in it. We have a really, really great team, but I think that the things that Kelly and the rest of our CSR leaders are focusing on is specifically listening to what the client needs. No different than when you're speaking to somebody about digital marketing, listening to what they have and being active in that listening with an intent to solve the problem. And I think that those are the key points that how we can. We really want to fill that lead board, and we do a tremendous amount of outbounding on the existing database to mine those clients that we have to put ourselves in the best possible position. Because you're right, there are days when here, Monday, Philadelphia, 68 degrees. Not like my heat is running through or I'm turning my AC on, but how can I get into that tune-up? How can I look at providing a full comfort solution and doing some things outside the box that we might not have done in the past? So the first thing and probably the most important thing is have the conversation. And so many people say that one-on-one is not the important thing, that there's some other fire I got to deal with, but just understanding and listening. I think sometimes when you sit down to listen to those calls with a CSR, and we haven't gone fully automated by any means, and nor do I think we will anytime. I think it's still a very big human element of how that first touch point and that moment of truth that customer has in the interaction that you create that's going to, you worked so hard to get the lead from a digital standpoint or a print standpoint. Now, what does that first interaction look like besides what they've done to get from the site or from your billboard or from your direct mail piece? How do you make them feel special about the opportunity to create a lasting environment?
One of the things that we've noticed is, particularly in HVAC, there's less people kind of looking at replacement, and a lot of people are focusing more on repair. If they can repair it, they're going to do that. So how has some of the messaging changed for you guys in relation to not only HVAC, but roofing as well, to kind of get clients, to get that lead?
Obviously, two very, very different entities, but and I'll address them both. On the HVAC side, we do still see the opportunity that exists for us is really to explain to the customer what the options are and giving those 6 options to it. I can repair it today, I can fix it, but what happens when if the situation is, because you got 2 situations with you're either going to do no business at all and not do the right thing, or you're going to do it with the wrong company. We want to put a situation that explains that process of why, whether it be Dilling Heating and Air, whether it be, Munns or any of the roofing companies or any of the HVAC companies that we have, that putting a solution out that makes sense to that customer at that time to be able to say, hey, we can do these things, but here's what we're recommending. Here's what I would do for my mom. Here's the things that are most important to solve your issue right now in the short term, but here is the long-term solution, and really try to coach that client. We're still seeing good tech turnovers on the heating and air side, and it's really just about explaining the options that maybe somebody didn't choose at one point earlier, but Here's the best solution that we have right now to fix what you have, not just today, not tomorrow, but for the next 5 to 7 years.
Yeah. Do you think there's been a shift in where people should spend money for these leads? Do you think that right now, in particular, people should be more heavy on the digital side when people are actually looking for a new roof or a repair on their HVAC system? Or do you think that a lot of traditional media still matters a lot?
I think it does, but I think it's going to be out of control to buy that space for the next 9 to 10 months. I say that because there is going to be a tremendous amount of money that's going to be spent, whether you're on the left side or the right side, on political advertising, and it's going to dominate. So if you're not looking at some type of direct lead generation program, or you've backed off on it, it might be a situation where you've been there's not going to be the inventory available. And so we are currently looking at all of our direct, I'll give you a perfect example. A lot of people in the space aren't a big fan of Yelp. Okay. But you can go do a search for pretty much anywhere, whether it be, heating and air conditioning repair in Denver, to heating and repair in Minneapolis or in here in Philadelphia. It still operates a 1, 2, 3 position. Okay. What they've done as far as improvements in their Apple Pay on high-end luxury cars, as far as pumping it in, as far as where it's coming in with regards to Alexa and the partnerships that they have there. You're still going to have to spend money on the paid side, whether it be your local service ads, whether it be your PPC, whether it be your social media. I'm also looking, if somebody's in a direct lead source, we're going to try to capitalize it to the best ability. We're still seeing 5, 6, 7, 8 times return. And if you're peeling back the onion and really kind of dissecting what's working and what's not working and what your cost, let me rephrase that, what your revenue per lead is, it's a big factor that's going to help you make the right decisions moving forward.
Yeah, I think if you focused on your reviews on Yelp, it can be a great revenue source. It's showing up on the search engine results page every time, almost every search in home services. So great point. If you're facing a client right now and they came to you and said, I'm really down on leads, I feel like we're doing a lot of the right things. What are 3 things that you might look at? And I'm putting you on the spot here because I didn't give you this question, but what are 3 things you would look at to kind of analyze, is this company really maximizing their opportunities or not? What are 3 things you'd kind of dig into right away?
Meaning that the company I might select to help me with the lead generation? I just want to make
Yeah. Yep.
So the first thing is that I can ask you for referrals, but I know you're going to give me great ones. Okay. What I want to do is I want to look at, the first thing is how do they help you in understanding your process of what's going on? Because it's not about their process. It's about how do they adapt and communicate with you. So the first thing that I want to know is where's the cadence that we're going to have as far as communication? That's the most important thing to me, because it shows that you have a true partnership with the company that you're doing. Look at their reviews online. What are people saying about them? What are the video testimonials they have? How are they different in the marketplace? Who are the top people that are using them? Okay. Those are the things that I'm checking out when I'm looking at a provider to say, those are the companies that I want to do business with, because if it can work for a Chad Peterman, it can work for an Aaron Gaynor. It can work for a Bob Sweet. It can work for all of these different companies. Why isn't it working with me? Am I the problem, or is the company the problem? And a lot of times we're afraid to look at ourselves, Megan, and assume that it's always the company versus me that needs to change.
That's a really good point. I wanted to dive into, we hear the word recession a lot lately, and we don't have to hold on to that word, but if you're a company right now, a home service company, and you really want to focus on kind of the word recession-proofing, or making sure that no matter what comes your way, you can weather the storm, what are some of the areas that you would recommend they focus on?
First and foremost, get your customers to talk about you. Making sure that you're asking for that 5-star experience that you're going to promise when you walk through the door. Make sure that the customer has the understanding that you're going to ask for the review when you leave. Giving user-generated content feedback back on that review. Hey, thanks so much for allowing us to repair your heating and air conditioning system at your home. giving feedback back to the search engine to say, hey, that we're important, having your team take photos of what's happening out in the community, doing things that are grassroots efforts that people are going to want to see. The word recession doesn't mean anything to me. It doesn't mean anything to us here at LB Capital and in our companies. So that means that, yes, somebody is still searching for that service, heating and air, roofing, painting, and still see the search volume going through the roof. How does your site give the right end user experience that's going to allow them, if they do find you, they do see your information, they do see your team putting it out on social media, they see the work culture that you have going on. These are things that are going to help when people come to the site to know and choose who you are, regardless if there's a recession or not, because the toilet's still going to break. The guy that's going to try to replace the plunger himself in me is going to crack the tank and need a new one put in. Okay. And you get to the point where, are you servicing and honoring your customers is the biggest thing that you can do. And I think that if it's a situation where you do the right things and showcase it to your customers, more customers will come and they'll follow you.
I love that answer. And I think you're always doing this. If you're an owner of a home service company, you should be focusing on these things all the time, not when things get a little slower or leads are down. This should be a focus that happens for your business all the time. Did you think that you saw some companies get a little bit lazy during those booming years that we just had?
150%.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like people lost the ability to sell, to understand that process. The same process that you and I learned at the Donnelly Directory 25 years ago, the process that you learned in the Donnelly Directory of, hey, let me build some rapport. Let me make sure that customer understands. Let me walk into that home. Let me ask permission to walk in that home. Let me take one step versus the next step versus the next step. Oh, we're not ready to move on to that step. And then utilize your existing customers to help close that. I think that there was an incredible laziness, and I think people have lost the art of selling. You look at companies that, like, for example, Lance. He's had 4 different private equity companies that he's grown and flipped and sold. He's never sold an HVAC unit. Okay, sold it for mid-figures. He's never been on a roof, sold it for mid-8 figures. What is it? These are all widgets. Okay, it's about providing a service to solve what that customers need, whether it be digital marketing, okay, whether it be painting, whether it be roofing, whether it be siding, whether it be windows. You still have to service the customer, and you have to provide a 5-star experience. And then have that customer share how great of an experience they had. And if you do those things, people make it so complicated sometimes. And if they take a step back and just simplify what they have going on, it's an easy win.
It is. When you think about engagement with your current client base, I think there's nothing worse than when you have a client, you've serviced a client, and then you see that they went and purchased their system from somebody else. When you think about your existing client base, I think we overlook that interaction sometimes. We kind of take that relationship for granted. So what is some advice that you have for owners on how to interact and stay close to that customer base?
One of the first things that regardless is whether it's now March, okay, most people are getting ready in the next 60 days that they're going to be in some type of shoulder season. Okay. How are you not communicating with the people that you haven't touched base with in the last 10 months? Okay, to fill the board. Okay, whether you can utilize automation to whatever it might be, I'd look at building that customer base out in Service Titan, or House Call Pros or whatever you're using, and I would put communication out to them. For those that opened the email, great. Now I'd pick up the phone and I'd call them and say, hey, we'd love to come out and service you. Love to see that, that everything is working okay. Can we do that? People don't ask, and to your point earlier, people aren't asking for the business. I'm going to try to say, hey, who haven't I worked with because I didn't get a service agreement, or it's a situation that I haven't touched base with them. And I'm going to try to put myself back out in front of them in times when it isn't the times that they need me, so that even if it's a situation where they don't need me at that point, if they do, when that first major heat is, I've done communication. How am I going about social media? How am I putting myself in front of that audience? How am I building out lookalike audiences to keep the brand alive in this process? It's so critical. It will help you in your times. It's funny, as I look back to my career on the digital side, and I would always say 10 months out of the year is going to be great for us. It's those 2 months between March and April, May, and between September 15th and November 1st are going to be the toughest that we're going to have to weather the storm through, okay? Because there is no storm. The fact of the matter is, all those things you do all year long will help build you to when you don't need it, so that you can put those calls on your board that are going to help you to be successful.
Is there anything else that you want to share, or you feel like just any information that you have that you'd like to share and get out to people as far as educating in the space?
I said it, and I was just at a mastermind group, and, I share this collectively to everybody that's in the audience, is asking for help is not a sign of weakness, but a sign of strength. Meaning that there are a lot of people that want to give back, i.e. why you're doing a podcast, i.e. why you're trying to give information to people, why people do shop tours. And that if you're not willing to ask how to better yourself, and these are the times when you should be working on your business, because in high demand seasons, you're working in the business. And so those are the things that, a shop that's growing is, a lot of people want to help. I've never seen anything like it. Like in my former life, it was always, I can't share my information with this person or that person because they're going to steal my client. And in this space, the home service space, there's so much give back. There's so much give back to the community. It's something that I truly love that people are willing to do, is to share their wealth of knowledge to help others. And there really, truly is an abundance mindset, that there's enough work for everybody out there, that you don't have to cherry pick. You don't have to be unethical. You can do the right things, and everybody can win together. That's just something that I've really, I've taken on a lot of gratitude for in my life, that, people are willing to do that. And that I get a small little platform of 15 minutes of fame, to say how excited I am that I care a little bit about the successes that I've had in my life.
Yeah, that was a great bookend to this conversation, because I think you live your life like that. I know that. And I think everyone you run into, whether you're a competitor or not, what I've noticed too is you can always ask for help, and people are really open to that. And to me, that's a special industry. So thank you for that.
Thank you for having me.
Alicia, thank you so much for joining us. So Alicia, how long have you been with Nexstar?
I've been with Nexstar 5 years, going on 6 years this fall.
And what is your role there?
My role is a coaching manager. So I can explain that. As a coaching manager, I get the pleasure and honor of managing half of our coaching team. So I get to manage all those smart people that help our members day in and day out.
And how many members do you support right now?
We, as Nexstar, as a total organization, we support about 1,000 companies nationwide through the U.S., Canada, Australia, and Cayman Islands.
It's amazing. So you are the right person for this podcast, is what I'm hearing. So we're going to dive right into it. So I would love to get some feedback from you. At the end of last year, we heard a lot of noise about leads dropping off, and it's gone into Q1 this year. So are you hearing some of that from some of your members right now? Are they struggling with lead gen?
We are, yes. Yep. And it's the season too, right?
Right.
Shoulder season.
It's been a really weird weather, right? Like, yes. The winter's been really weird.
Yes, absolutely. And the weather, well, we don't, we say we're not a weather-driven business, but yes, we have to acknowledge the weather pattern this year for sure.
Is there specific, I know you guys focus mostly on electrical, HVAC, and plumbing, but are there specific industries that you think are feeling it more than others right now, would you say?
Yeah, I would definitely say HVAC obviously is the most volatile, just because of weather patterns, whereas the plumbing and, electrical verticals, mostly stay steady. But plumbing we've seen some, volatility, I would say, or activity within that. But definitely, HVAC is been the dominant focus.
As a coach and as someone that's talking to a lot of members, what are some of the key recommendations that you're making right now to members to dive into their business and look at some changes that they can make for lead gen right now?
Yeah, absolutely. So here at Nexstar, we create enduring businesses built to serve their communities for decades. So that means our coaches across all departments see it time and time again, where decisions out of desperation are never sustainable, especially like right now with what we're seeing. So, we know while it can be painful in the moment, we encourage long-term planning versus short-term and oftentimes costly and non-profitable gains. So it's important to coach our members for the long game. So to focus on what they can control, which is the sustainability for their own businesses through these 3 focus areas. So first, to ensure all their operations are fine-tuned, from call centers to their technicians running the call to their sales department. So making sure that the calls and the leads they're getting now are being booked and the opportunities they're getting right now are maximized through, clear KPIs and benchmarking goals. And, what we say is bad habits are created in good times. So while this is not a good time, we do see there's opportunities within those departments across, all different types of shops. So it's really, really important to focus, on those operations. But then next, to focus on and nurturing those relationships with the current customer. So the marketing dollars have already been spent to acquire that customer. So reaching out to partner plan members, lapsed customers, et cetera, to fill those boards are super, super important. I mean, that's why you're spending the marketing dollars. So, really focusing on those current customers to help fill the boards in this time helps with that. And then third, we want them to be proactive, and that's all about marketing and business planning. Shoulder season happens every single year, so let's plan on it and let's be intentional about the planning.
So let's back up to nurturing clients, existing clients, because you're right. You spent a lot of money to get that client. And what are some of the key ways that you guys recommend that your members interact with their existing client base?
Yeah, great question. I mean, we want them to be talking to their customers constantly. And that is through different channels, whether it be emails, whether it be following up with happy calls, whether it be handwritten notes. It really engaging in social. It's really to keep in front of your customer. And, I even forgot to mention that the most critical communication channel is direct mail still. I know in this digital age, we're like, oh, direct mail, but that is one of those, again, sustainable tactics that work. And it allows you to, keep that communication going with your customer.
When you're looking at kind of clients right now and you're looking at their overall marketing strategy, is the recommendation still heavy on digital versus traditional? I know it depends on how well they're branded in the marketplace, but right now, based on kind of where we are and what's going on kind of in the marketplace, and people are repairing more than replacements and things like that, is there any recommendation that you guys are making on digital spend in marketing versus traditional?
Yeah, I mean, we always say, like you said, it depends, right? That's the magic phrase in marketing. And, we say we don't have a magic number. And that's the other phrase we have is there's never any silver bullet that's going to increase the leads, without a negative repercussion elsewhere in the business, and so again, it really depends on, what that company's goals are. If they're focusing this year on branding, then that's going to have different tactics and a different plan assigned to it than if they're focusing on, new customer acquisition versus customer retention. So, that's why we say it really depends. But, bottom line, novel and new rarely works, right? I know that everyone's looking for that silver bullet and they think it's in digital. They think it's, pay-per-click, it's local service ads. But again, we're helping members run a sustainable business, which is a marathon and not a sprint, And so while we say there are never any silver bullets, there are golden BBs. And those are those tactics that exist in every department, not just even in marketing. But again, that's where we really encourage our members to look at their operations as a whole and what can be tweaked just a little bit to increase that profitability or, to increase that conversion rate.
Yeah, I was just going to say, can you give me an example of that? So when they're looking, let's say they're a Service Titan client and they're looking at their dashboard, what are some key things or KPIs that you would have them look at in their business that can make an impact if they were to increase it, for instance?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, again, it kind of depends on where we're going to start. But so for example, if on the marketing front, since I have that perspective, looking at the kind of that customer journey, once they make that call, what does that booking rate look like? So really diving into that. Can you increase your booking rate or, by 5%? If that booking rate is solid, then move into that next phase. And, that would be the conversion rate. What can those techs do in the home? How can they increase that conversion rate by 5%? Those small incremental changes really do add up to be really substantial in the end too. And then, then we could even go further and, let's go in and work with the sales teams, even if you can increase their conversion rate by 5%. Again, small incremental changes throughout each department really does produce a significant lift.
I love what you said at the beginning of this conversation, which is, you're always preparing for a downturn. It's not like we want to be reactive. We want to be constantly working on the core processes of our business. And I think what happened during these COVID years, we got fat and happy. We had a ton of leads. Business was really good. And some businesses really did lose focus, not because they wanted to, but they were so busy. So if you were going to sit down with a company and just go back to basics, and we've talked about, looking at certain KPIs, but if you were going to give them 3 things to look at and really focus on, what would they be? And I know it's dependent on a business, but let's just say across the board, what really matters right now?
Yeah, I would say it's being consistent in your messaging and knowing who you are and who you aren't. And, that's really driven in, by a company's mission, vision, and values. And that, that is something that, that extends both internally with employees, but then also, bleeds into the market and with your consumers too. So that would be, that's definitely the first thing. And the second thing is really holding your current customers and really understanding the value of your current customers to drive that repeat business. Again, because though you've already spent that money to acquire them, and, oftentimes we do see that members will have these membership programs and they're viewed as $0 tickets, which really becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. So really taking the time to develop a really great membership program, I think is also a key, a key tactic that I would look into, as well as, again, really diving into the operations and creating those good habits now, again, for that consistency, because really it goes back to that marathon, right? A marathon over a sprint, consistency over intensity. This isn't about doing a thing or things for 30 days. This is where that discipline and accountability is needed and where a Nexstar coach's work is the most important.
Let's say you have a smaller company, which I know Nexstar works with larger companies, but let's say you have a smaller company that really can't compete on Google right now. Their LSA doesn't come up great. Their site is just, they're in a highly populated market and their site doesn't rank organically. What is some advice you would give a smaller company to kind of get to start generating leads right now?
It would be, this is really kind of getting back to the basics, if you will. So, leveraging their current customers, asking for that referral, because we know, again, and this is why we hammer on the current customers and the relationship with them, because they're your best referral, whether it be online or within their community. So leveraging your current customers, by either asking for the referral, maybe there's like a referral program you can implement right away. Also, again, maybe it's really just going around and door hangers, where they have the jobs, the door hangers. We live in a digital world. And so anything tactile, there is still something to it. And there's studies behind the tactileness of direct mail, of door hangers. And really, I would also say for those, smaller companies, again, we're living in a digital world. Personalization is key. So what I mean is, like, for example, handwritten thank you notes. It's simple and it's authentic and it's a way to connect with your customer. The effort is worth the reward in that case. And going back to the importance of nurturing those relationships with the existing customers, the ROI on those relationships is super invaluable when you think about, again, word of mouth, online reviews, being their go-to when something goes wrong, and then, bringing in their network and, them being your mouthpiece, super important. So that's where that comes in my opinion.
I've heard that a lot lately. If you're smaller and you're in a metro area, you're like, how do you compete? How do you compete right now in this space where there's a small amount of places to show up on the search engine results pages? So I love that. So
yeah, I mean, it's tough. And I'd also say, sorry, Megan, one last thing too.
No, I love it.
Is, for them, take the time to really, again, dive into what are your competitive advantages as a business? What do you have over those other, 5 other businesses that, you seem to think are giants that are dominating that first page? And that's where you can leverage the, your marketing, your messaging, leveraging email as well. That's a really, really great low cost way to engage with your customers as well.
How about, text messaging? We all know we're in a digital world. I think a lot of the members have gotten really comfortable with emailing now. But do you find that text messaging is still something that people struggle with as far as the interaction with their client base?
Actually, yes, I do, which is so interesting because text messaging, I mean, gosh, I've seen lots of studies that, text messaging is super effective. People are going to open them, and whether they, whatever they do with them, but the open rate is just insane. And so it's really interesting that, yes, I would say that a lot of our members, I don't want to say they haven't figured it out, but they haven't built it out yet as much as I think they could. And I think the other thing is there's a lot of rules where we want to be really careful about, the compliance rules. And I think that's where, that's what I think is the hindrance right now, is really understanding what are those, what's acceptable, what's not. And, educating contractors and our members, so they understand what's acceptable and what's not.
And it is, I think, in some platforms like CRMs, it's pretty easy to interact with your customer base. I think it's people you haven't interacted with over a year or year and a half. That's where you can run into some issues. So I really, you've given some really amazing information. I always want to give people an opportunity to, if there's things that you want to say or you think people should know about, I'd love for you to just share.
Yeah, absolutely. And, what I can say is, I don't know, if there are Nexstar members who are going to be listening. I'd assume so. But, if people who are listening don't know who Nexstar is, we're a best practices coaching and training organization. And we're on a mission to help turn the world's best tradespeople into the world's best business people. And our team is proud to serve and support our members as they crush their goals every single day. And, what differentiates, us from others is our 32 years of experience. We are structured specifically to help those home service contractors build those lasting legacies within their businesses, that evolve into enduring organizations. And so that's where, I keep going back to proactive versus reactive, especially in this time. I know we talked about shoulder season happens every single year, so let's plan for it. But I believe it's Jim Collins that says, when it's not if something bad is going to happen, it's when it happens. So it's really preparing, our members, for when that is going to happen, just like what we saw in Q4 and we're kind of seeing now. And so again, it's really making sure that they're taking the time to do the work, to do the planning, to be disciplined about following that plan and not chasing the shiny objects. Because again, decisions that are made in haste or, without rationale are oftentimes the most dangerous and most costly. I know we've seen it on the digital side time and time again, and so we want to make sure that we're protecting the profits right now, especially if there is less leads coming in.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And I think, just throwing more money at it, if you are not turning a lead into a booked job, then don't throw more money at your pay-per-click. It's not going to work for you.
Exactly. And it's like, don't throw money if you're not, like you said, if you're not booking or the conversion rate sucks and you see that, it's like, it's again, the definition of insanity, and throwing more money at it is not going to help. So let's look at the long term versus that short term.
I have one more question for you. How far ahead do you recommend, I know you plan out for the year when you sit down with your members, but how far ahead should they be thinking at all times when they're, when they're running their marketing and they're building out their plan? I know of their annual plan, but weather can change and seasons can get delayed. How far in advance do you want them to be ready for kind of the next season?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, we usually say 6 months. So for example, in the winter months, so November, December, January, that's when we should really be focusing on the spring and the summer, especially, from the digital side on an SEO front. If you're wanting to move the needle there, you got to do that work, at least 6 months ahead of time. So, really it's looking at, and it all goes back to your goals, right? So if one of your goals is trying to increase your ranking organically, then you have to do that work way ahead of time. I guess it also depends on the tactic, but really what we're saying is, you should be focusing on the next season kind of in, I would say probably 6 months. If you're going to be focusing on, spring, summer, and the winter. So it definitely quarterly is when we, especially on the business side, they're doing quarterly business reviews. We definitely encourage that on the marketing side as well, because again, you can't be so rigid in your plan that you can't flex when something happens, because that's what the plan is for, to ensure that you are being proactive. But at the same time, there are things that are going to happen in the marketplace that, that you will need to address, that you will need to flex for. So that's where that quarterly planning definitely can help.
Well, anything else you want to add? Alicia, you've been awesome. Really, really good information.
Oh, thank you. No, I don't think so. I think it's really just, while I know it's, we're always looking for the new and best thing, but, we got to find joy in the boring, right? The best company know their why. And, this is a really good example. Think of a professional athlete, right? A professional golfer. They go out there and they're putting the 5-foot green, day in and day out, 5 hours a day. They are just constantly putting that 5 feet to make that. And yeah, it's super boring, but it's, it is going to make them better. And so again, I would really, encourage the listeners to, while there may be some great new shiny lead gen program, while we think, pay-per-click is the key, really making sure that you are mastering the basics first.
Yeah, and slow times are a great time to reflect on your best practices, because before we know it, the heat of the summer is going to be here. So
exactly. Take the time to do it. It is going to be worth it, and it's going to pay off in spades.
And if somebody is interested in working with Nexstar, Alicia, what's the best way to get a hold of you guys?
Yes, absolutely. If you're interested in what we do or want more information, please go to nexstarnetwork.com. You'll find everything you need about our organization. And if you're, looking to join or want more information on how to join, there is a form to contact our sales department. So we'd love to chat with you more about this and other best practices that we coach on every day.
Thanks for tuning in. If you'd like to get connected, you can find me at chadmpeterman.com. To see what our team's up to, you can visit petermanbros.com. As always, keep growing out there.